I'm not a squeamish man, and nor do I spare tears for those who deserve punishment, but what I saw in that processorium still haunts me. Naked human beings were standing in a switchbacked line between high fences. Outside the fences, the Adeptus Mechanicus menials stood guard with shotguns in hand. The people, all mature men and women, were shepherded down the caged walk like livestock. And they were food beasts being led to the slaughter, meat for the ravenous appetite of the machine god. Every surface was easily cleanable. Large plastic flaps divided areas from each other. Servitors with spray units surgically attached to their backs prowled about, hosing filth into slit drains set into the perfectly smooth, slanted floors. We walked above all of this, past sentry pods on spikes occupied by galvanic rifle-armed snipers. Our path went from one end of the hall to the other, and I could see pretty much the whole sorting process, beginning to end. As the line slowly advanced, the people were passing through various scanning devices, most of them mounted in ugly functional arches that let out a constant series of chimes. Occasionally, one would let out an angry blare, and the indicator lumens would flash red. The rejected person was then swallowed up by a trap door opening beneath their feet. From these pits, a hideous stench filled the air, and the grinding sounds of industrial mincers were heard. One rejected man grabbed onto the lip and hung there, arms and hands bloodied, shouting a stream of defiant profanities. Guards then came rushing in, grating to either side of him, and shocked him until finally his grip caused him to fall. The adepts wouldn't even waste bullets on these people. The trapdoor flipped up, and the next terrified person was ushered forward. A number of pneumonic gates separated the people from each part of the process, snapping open and then shut with bone-crushing force. Violent metal arms snatched them up and spread-eagled them in the air. A servitor then sheared them all over. At another, they were subjected to a high-pressure counterseptic wash, whose chemical stink made me choke from even 100 feet away. More scanners, more rejects winnowed out. Machines forcibly dressed them in the heavy rubberized garments common to all the monotask servitors. These were saggy on them, all one size, until another process force-shrank them to fit their bodies, where metal cuffs, sockets, and collars bit into their vulnerable flesh. The shivering lines of terrified men and women reached a final series of gates. They were manhandled into different queues, and then hustled from one room to their fates. Thankfully, I was spared a view of the surgeries. I doubted the Adeptus Mechanicus provided anesthetic for the same reason they would not dull the pain of a nail under the hammer. What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today we are continuing Hollow Weekend. 4 days of all things horror when it comes to 40k, and of course, what you've heard is a pretty gruesome description as to what happened to the criminals, the murderers, those unfortunate to be deemed a servitor, or at least will become a servitor. This is a fate worse than death. For in the grim dark future of Warhammer 40k, there is only war, and with war comes death. There are countless ways to die, whether it comes from the mutant, the heretic, or the xeno, but let's not rule out natural disaster, disease, or accident. All these ways are indeed terrible ways that your life can end. All these ways are indeed terrible ways that your life can end, but there is an alternative, a fate worse than death. Becoming a mindless drone, via servitude imperapitus, aka the servitor. As a servitor, you will be mind-wiped, and often cybernetically enhanced to better accomplish the task you'll be reprogrammed to do. The Adeptus Mechanicus normally creates these beings, and supplies them to the multiple departments within the Imperium's administratum. Space Marine chapters, as well as AdMech Forge worlds, also have many servitors amid their ranks to help them clean, fix, and in some rare instances, be used for combat or medical purposes. One such abomination is that of the murder servitor. Due to the lobotomy and reduced motor functions, most servitors are slow and methodical. However, these are quite the opposite. Their brains are laced with multiple circuits that ignite messages to their brain. These messages then multiply and give them multiple instances of superhuman speed and tactics to accomplish their goal. And that goal is simply slaughter. With a desensitization to pain, they will likely rip apart their own body to accomplish this task. Pair this lethality with their mechanical components, and this servitor has now become a cyborg murder monstrosity. The murder servitor is usually seen within spacecraft and orbital stations, typically as guards for criminals or as hunters when these criminals do happen to escape. They can range from hulking brutes to slim and slender assassins. Their arms could be augmented with hooks, blades, or outright replaced with bolters or even plasma cannons. This may seem like overkill, but it's best to be overprepared than caught unaware, specifically if you are boarded by the Drukhari, the Orcs, Gene Stealers, or other space pirates. And with that being said, guys, that is where I will end this video for today. Clearly, the servitor can be used for menial tasks such as fixing a light bulb, or they can be used alongside the Adeptus Astartes as fire support, as just grunts to lead to the slaughter, or as a means to fix and assist any other type of task that the Space Marines themselves will not do. Yeah, reading the first portion as to how these poor humans are basically pushed into a slaughterhouse is pretty crazy. Now, it does get a ton more gruesome if you continue to read and find out just exactly what they do to the brain to lobotomize and create this servitor. Now, even though the servitor is pretty much a non-thinking, non-cognitive being, there have been a few occasions where the personality of the person that has become a servitor leaks through, and usually this is met with either death or a very, very painful reconstruction of the brain to allow these emotions, this personality, to once again fall subconscious. It is a very, very cruel fate, but of course, this is a galaxy filled with war where hope is never there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this eerie story on the servitor.
The dull chanting echoed throughout the dimly lit hall. An ex-Imperium temple now held the scene for a debauched and horrific ritual. Cultists performed many activities around chanters, which circled a large demonic cauldron filled to the brim with sacrificed blood. They were draped in various robes, but mainly black or in the spectrum of red or blue. These heavy robes hid the faces and weapons they all carried, despite their fervent belief that what they were doing was more powerful than the Imperium. The chanting grew in volume, and the gore seemed to react and bubble in excitement, preparing to spew whatever monstrosity would be drawn from the warp. None of the cultists present had a sense of what they were actually doing. To allow a warp entity into the material realm was an extremely dangerous process. Luckily, or unluckily for these cultists, they had a guiding hand. From the bowed cultist perspective, they spotted a few slender fingers appearing on the rim of the cauldron. Slowly, a few tentacles sprouted from the viciously bubbling crimson. They rose, slowly attached to a humanoid head. No nose was present upon this otherwise perfectly formed face, and lively purple eyes seductively gazed upon the cultist who had performed many acts of depravity. The lips parted to give this creature a shallow gasp of air as its neck cleared the line of blood. The the tentacle shining with gore snapped back against her head and down her neck, mimicking hair. A claw rose out attached to her left arm, and some amongst the crowd reacted with fear, while others reacted with an overwhelming sense of awe. She memorized their faces. The rest of her perfectly formed body slowly followed, and once her waist became clear of the cauldron, she stepped out, revealing large avian-like feet and forelegs. She took a deep, sensual breath as the cultists finished their chant, locking her into this world for as long as her will allowed. Her gaze hit an all-present, and a smirk appeared across her face, realizing that all her followers were fixed upon her otherworldly form. She began caressing her skin with her claw, while she made an eerie, bird-like chirp. "My children," she stated, her voice beautiful beyond mortal understanding, soft yet unbelievably powerful. "I thank you for allowing me to come through to this world. We will begin a journey as a family that will be on the highest of pleasure. I know why you are here, and I will grant you a gift. This is the kind of rewards you can garner from his worship." She took another deep breath, and a psychic impulse ran through the ancient building. None of the cultists seemed to react, but they witnessed an astonishing change. The creature stood before them, morphed into a beautiful woman, naked with long golden hair, satisfying every desire with her womanly features. Into a man with short black hair, piercing blue eyes, and the physique to rival that of an Astartes. Into a tall, very slender, alien-looking female with pointed ears and tattooed skin. Although none of the cultists saw the same being stood in the spot where the creature was, they all experienced the highest point of arousal they ever would. "What you see, my children," she said, mimicking the sound of ecstasy, "is what you desire. Following his worship will bring these kinds of fantasies to life." She ended the mirage that entranced them all, instead choosing a natural human form. Although far more attractive than most, there seemed to be no sense of unholy grace. "To gain his voice, to allow him to whisper into your ear, you must cast aside the falsehoods taught to you. The Prince of Darkness is watching as you make this oath. Now," she yelled, "who is the enemy of mankind?" "The Emperor," all cultists yelled in unison. "What is old, decaying, and ready to be crushed?" Her face was stern, and her eyes slowly darted from person to person. "The Imperium of Men." "Who are the ones responsible for more deaths of human than any of the supposed enemies of mankind?" She moved behind a cauldron of blood and lifted her arms in the air, awaiting their proclamation. "The Astartes." Her voice unnaturally bellowed to a height that shook the very core of this ruinous temple. "And who is the one true God, the savior of mankind, and the one you should worship to obtain that which you desire?" "Slanesh," the crowd roared and repeated several times. A satisfactory smile appeared across her face. She forced the cauldron over and let the blood run down the steps into the crowd of adoring minions. They maniacally began to drink, bathe, caress each other in the blood. As the acts in the fallen building got worse and far more unspeakable to any sane human being, she graced them with her presence, but not with a touch. One particularly unaware follower reached out to stroke her. "My lady!" he exclaimed. The beheading was swift, and most did not even see her move. They only saw the cultist's face of awe roll across the floor, starting its own small pool of blood that unnaturally flowed towards the rest. She stared at the life force of the foolish mortal who dared to lay an unwanted hand upon her perfect human form. "It's mistress to all of you," she said, her face stern and the monstrous claw reverting back to the guise of a human arm. "Don't start indulging in all of your whimsical fantasies just yet. I require one of my dear sisters here with me." Her eyes returned to their natural purple distinction and scoured the crowd. "Begin with the process," she stated with a void of emotion that sent chills to many of the cultists who couldn't help but obey. She sat upon the prepared throne with a satisfactory smile as she watched the pitiful lesser beings going on about the requirements to make the next successful summoning.
It was the 876th year of the 41st millennia, when the Basilica of St. Muriel, which lies upon the imperial world of Van Horn, had an accident that damaged a long-forgotten stasis reliquary deep within this basilica. Unfortunately, contained within was the spirit of the infamous bloodthirster, Ka Jagannath, the Lord of the Blood Tide. Breaking free of his imprisonment and possessing the body of one of the workers to serve as his demon host, the greater demon unleashed a tide of gore unseen upon this world. Everything that washed through it was corrupted, everyone it touched now blessing the god of skulls and blood. Even the emperor's most virtuous servants were soon afflicted with this murderous fever that rendered them into homicidal maniacs. They roamed the nearby streets to abduct innocents and sacrifice them upon a desecrated altar of blood. In an orgy of destruction that lasted 8 days and 8 nights, this carnage attracted more and more demons through the warp. Within only a matter of days, the blood tide would have corrupted the entirety of the planet. And on the morning of the 9th day, the battle sisters of the Adepta Sororita Order of the Ebon Chalice assaulted the basilica, resulting in some of the sisters also becoming corrupted by the malefic blood tide. The survivors endured valiantly, but were soon slaughtered by a horde of bloodletters that had taken up position atop the basilica's walls. The blood tide only abated with the arrival of the Grey Knights Brotherhood.
Armored in faith, shielded by devotion, armed with purity of purpose. The Emperor's will made manifest. We are the warriors of the Grey Knights, Demon Hunters. Chaos cannot stand against us. For we are the Hammer.
But all was not well. Turning their blades upon the surviving battle sisters, the Grey Knights sated their blades in their innocent blood, effectively turning their weapons and armor into talismans of purity. The Grey Knights were then shielded from spiritual infection by the gore flood of the blood tide and were able to make their way deep into the heart of the cursed basilica. Led by a trio of their chapter's formidable librarians who enunciated the cants of cleansing to repel the blood tide wherever they tread. The Grey Knights then found the greater demon at the center of the building's rotten heart, Ka Jagannath. a valiant battle ensued, and by the sacrifice of the Fourth Brotherhood's champion, Ordon, the demon was defeated. But before the bloodthirster spirit could escape its broken body, the Grey Knights cast its foul soul deep into the Imperium, which also banished the blood tide, and the summoned demons went back with it as part of a psychic backlash. What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm here to talk about Warhammer 40k. This was a pretty epic story to tell on the eve of All Hallows. So, if you guys weren't aware, I have been doing creepy videos, horror videos that have to do with Warhammer 40k on this Hallow weekend. So go ahead and check out the playlist. I also have playlists from previous years, so I believe it goes 3 years back, and we even have a playlist for creepypastas. But let's continue on with this video. So this video has been one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. It is about the Grey Knights and the Sisters of Battle taking on a Bloodthirster of Khorne and its Descendants of the Warp, which has taken over an entire planet. This was seen way back in the 5th edition Codex of the Grey Knights, and it's something that has been seen with a lot of question. Because when you think about it, the Grey Knights are supposed to be anti-chaos. The Grey Knights are supposed to be all about uncorruptible warriors to fight against demons. And if they are uncorrupted, if they already have rites of hymns and prayers on their armor and weapons to ward off demons, why would they need to bathe themselves in the blood of loyalist, uncorrupted Sisters of Battle to confront these Khornate demons? They should already be above and beyond what is necessary to take on the Bloodthirster, as well as the hordes of Khornate bloodletters, so why take out these sisters? They're already going to be loyalists fighting on their side. It makes no sense, and it doesn't further the story besides just adding to the gore, adding to the, I guess, hopelessness of 40k. Now again, I believe this was back in 5th edition, and the 5th edition Codex of the Grey Knights was written by Matt Ward, and of course we all know how that goes. Not very good. So it was basically just hopelessness, goriness, selfless slaughter for no reason. So my question to you guys is, as of right now, I believe this story has been retconned to include this portion taken out. So it's not like the Grey Knights did it anymore. They fought alongside the Sisters of Battle, and they cleansed the world of chaos. The question is, do you guys like it better retconned or pre-retcon? Because it's pretty badass as it is, bathing themselves in the blood of loyalist holy sisters to confront demons. I feel like that would be something that like a regular Space Marine chapter would do, or one that is like gone rogue or something like that, but is still fighting against chaos. It doesn't make sense for these Grey Knights to do that, because again, there should be no need. They're already powerful enough to fight against chaos. Yeah, that was just something that I really wanted to talk to you guys about, because it made no sense, but it also worked perfectly with the category of, horror and 40k. And with that being said, that is all I have for today's video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and of course, if you guys want to help support us, be sure to hit up our Patreon page, or you can support us directly by going to our super thanks on this video and donating in that manner. Stay subscribed for more things Warhammer 40k, and of course, stay subscribed so you can check out the final video for Hallow Weekend and check out the playlists. As always, this has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll be talking to you guys in the next one. Peace.